Well, I want to ask you, it's hard to solve a problem when people can't even admit, some people can't admit that there is a problem or exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, I was watching your show before I got on, and you just see the body language of Joe Walsh versus the body language of the Castile family. Joe Walsh, who threatened the president on Twitter, is acting like somehow he's been wronged, and yet the Castile family shared a laugh with you. And so there's this thing where the black people, we sort of feel like we have to sort of rise above and be on our best behavior and and be the sort of spiritual leaders. And meanwhile, Joe Walsh is threatening the president and gets booked on your show. You know what I mean? Like we have to change the narrative. We have to stand up. And the other thing I want to comment on is the fact that we talk about, there's this sort of recurring narrative of like do the right thing when the cops talk to you, hold the steering wheel, and yet Tamir Rice, John Crawford III, they didn't have the chance to even do the right thing before they were killed. And I feel like we have to sort of address that thing, that you can't good behavior yourself out of being killed by a police officer all the time.
And to Charles's point where he says, you know, I think, Charles, you're exhausted sometimes from trying to educate people or pull people up or show them why they may have biases or whatever. I mean, that was a difficult exchange with Joe Walsh, but sometimes I welcome that, but I can understand how you can get tired of it.
But can I just say something about Joe Walsh? I mean, one of the things I thought was particularly disgusting about his appearance was that he starts the clock running for when America goes to hell at Ferguson and what President Obama said about Ferguson. But he insulted the President of the United States. He stood up on the House floor and said and screamed out, "You lie," to the President of the United States within the first 6 months of him being in office. I would say that's when America started going off the rails. If you want to start trying to, if words matter and conduct matters, having an unprecedented show of disrespect to a sitting president within the first 6 months. He hadn't said anything about Ferguson or Trayvon or anybody, and so I thought it was particularly galling to hear that from him. And I think that we have to recognize that there's a certain section of people in the country that are just not willing to be self-critical at all. It's amazing to me. I was very proud, actually, of the mother who said, "I'm not going to forgive today." You know, in Charleston, you had all those black people shot up, and the first thing they said is, "We forgive," and everybody just praised them for being forgiving. We never had the conversation about this new rise of racist, violent groups. She said, "I'm not going to forgive," and she refused to play into that role, and I thought that was very, very good.
I've got to go, but and you're eating up W. Kamau Bell's time. W, I'll give you the last. I'll give you the,
you giving him the
last 30, the last 20 seconds.
You had George Charles.
Well, can I follow up on what Kamau said?
I yield. Are you going to yield the floor to the gentleman from the New York Times? Go ahead. The rest of your time.
But one thing that he said that I find particularly interesting, which is the idea that you actually you can't behave your way out of it, right? And I tell people all the time, when they pull a gun, you can't pull a resume.
Right.
You don't have that sort of time. Yeah. You can't say, "I go to this fancy school, you can't shoot me. I have this fancy job, you can't shoot me. I've never done anything wrong in my life, please don't shoot me." It doesn't happen that way. Tamir Rice didn't have any time to say any of those things.
Right.
That is not the way that it works.
Yeah. I've got to run. This is great. It was like we were out for drinks and, you know.
No, it's like a barbershop.
It's like the barbershop. Charles, you don't have any hair. So and Van. So the two guys, and I barely have any. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm glad that we could smile through such difficult times and have this. It was a really interesting conversation.